Welcome everyone. We're back with another show. This time with I still can't figure that out. Artemis. Welcome, Artemis. You can talk. You can talk now. You have permission to talk. You don't want to talk. He's a pain in the ass. I just wanna check sound, and he doesn't want to say anything. Okay. So that's why I love having you on as a co-host. So welcome.
I'm just here to make sure everything goes smoothly.
Yeah, and it already didn't. Every time I have a live stream with you, something happened. We didn't go live again for some reason. I didn't copy the right stream key. So I'm getting good at this. I'm getting good at making mistakes. So today our guest is someone I picked up on Twitter. He goes by the name of Thomistic. We agreed on addressing him as Tom. So welcome, Tom.
Hello.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us who you are and what you believe and why.
Okay, so I am I'm a convert to Catholicism. Originally, I grew up as a young Earth creationist Protestant, but over time, I kind of studied it, and now I actually work in evolutionary biology. And I also started following the works of St. Thomas Aquinas and moved away from Protestantism to more of a Thomistic, or a system of philosophy based on St. Thomas Aquinas, and to Catholicism. And so what I do generally, my Twitter account is mostly just me arguing with atheists and debunking atheist arguments. And so I also have a YouTube video or channel that also goes under the name of Thomistic, where I make arguments for the existence of God and other such issues like that. And yeah,
Okay.
that's it.
So so I already have a question, because you said you like debunking atheist arguments. So what's your favorite atheist argument?
Well, I mean the one that I've been hearing a lot lately is the argument with respect to the contradiction between omniscience and free will. And so the argument basically goes that God cannot know the future and us have free will at the same time. Because if God knows what we're going to do, then we have to do what God knows, which under their definition of free will means that we can't have free will, because they think that free will is the ability to do otherwise. So I mean, if you want to hear my response to that, it's simply that I have a different idea of free will. My idea of free will is simply that one person's will is not determined by anyone else, and so simply knowing, simply not being able to do otherwise than what you're going to do in the future does not mean that your will is determined by anything else. And so that's how I address that argument.
It literally sounds like hard determinism. I mean, I think that's a shit argument. I would never try to make it, but the rebuttal sounds like it's determinism, but it's not really determinism. That's basically the argument.
Well, it's determinism based upon an individual's free will. So it's determined by a person's will. And I mean, in order to argue that a person's will is determined by something else, you need something stronger than just saying that you can't do otherwise than you're going to do in the future. Because I mean, that's just a principle of logic. It doesn't even have anything to do with God. If you were able to do otherwise than what you do in the future, then that would mean that you're doing something in the future and you're not doing it at the same time, which is just a logical contradiction.
Yeah,
that makes things difficult on God.
Yeah, so I still think that if there is a set outcome, then I can do anything to change that outcome. I mean, if the outcome is already set, what could I do to change that outcome? That would be my
Right,
problem.
right, and my position is not that you can change the outcome. My position is that your will is not determined by anything beyond your own will. So we just have different definitions of free will.
Say that again. My will is
My
not.
my will is not determined by anything besides itself.
It's not determined by anything besides. No, but if someone else already. So, do you think God has a plan? Let's start with that.
Yeah, I do think God has a plan.
And do you think everything goes according to God's plan?
It depends on in what sense you're talking about God's plan, because there's God has a plan with respect to each human being, and that he wants each person to perfect themselves, right? Which obviously they don't do. But with respect to the whole picture, I would say, yeah, he has a whole plan, which includes some people, going against his will.
So humans are powerful enough to thwart God's plan. That's what you're saying.
Not with respect to the whole picture, with respect to so God can will what happens with respect to the whole picture, and then he can also will with respect to a particular human being what he wants them to do. So for example, okay, so I don't want anybody to murder anyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So but on the grand scale of if I was planning something on the grand scale, I could include murder inside of my plan, even though I don't want this particular person to murder.
Why? Especially if we're going to throw in the omnipotence thing. You just literally have the power to do anything, but you don't.
Well, I'm not saying that God couldn't prevent evil from happening.
Right. So he just chooses not to.
Right. Because God has free will.
And that's just one of God's unmet desires for the world.
Well, I think that God has free will, so he can will that a world exists with evil in it. And I don't see any problem with that.
Until you try to mention omnibenevolence, in which case you can't say that, given what you just said. So we can at least eliminate the fact that you believe that your God is omnibenevolent, which is nice.
Well, it depends on what you mean by that. Whenever I talk about omnibenevolence, I'm talking about
incapable of malice.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I would say that omnibenevolent.
What is benevolent malice?
So what omnibenevolence means is to will the good.
No, please answer my question. What is benevolent malice? How is that a possibility? What would that be?
So yeah, I agree. That would be a contradiction. Benevolent malice. However, so you can talk about willing things in different respects. So if you think about God's will with respect to each human being, he necessarily has to will each human being with himself as the end, which means ultimately that he has to will the good of each human being.
However, necessary according to what?
Well, he has to will himself as the end, because otherwise the end would be something other than themselves, and the end of what people are willing, or God is willing, is in a way a cause of the will. So, for example, whenever you will, I
don't see how that establishes anything as necessary.
Well, because God is the first cause, so nothing can be the cause of God's will.
Well, that's just special pleading. We both know that.
How is that special pleading?
Well, everything. Do you believe that everything in the universe needs to have a cause?
No, I don't think that.
Do you believe that the universe has a cause?
Yeah, I mean,
Why?
it depends on what you. So do you mean like?
It's possible that it doesn't need to have been created.
So I think that
So why do you
finite
think it
beings.
was?
I think that finite beings require a cause, because I think that finite beings, insofar as they're finite, require composition. And I think that whatever is composed depends upon its parts for its existence. So anything that's finite, it has a principle of which is being limited and the limitation itself. And those are the two, composites there.
And
And
that's
so,
what in the universe isn't finite.
well, it depends on how you define the universe, but
It
I
depends on how
would,
you define finite.
well, I ultimately would say that God is infinite.
And apparently outside the universe, so that doesn't answer the question.
Well, okay, if that's what you mean by the universe, then yeah, nothing inside the universe would be infinite.
So then don't you believe that God created everything?
Sure, because look, some people, whenever they say the universe, they just mean everything that exists.
All I want from you is your honest answers. That's
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'll try to use words in the same way. I think we both understand it. If we realize that we're not using the word the same way, I insist that we continue to make sure that we are.
Right.
yes.
So-
and
that's
that's
I'm not going to set you up for anything. All I want to hear is what you've got to say about what. And
let me throw in a little clarification. So during this conversation, we'll mostly be going by your definitions, and we want to know your definitions. So we will ask about those definitions. So don't assume that we have other definitions. If you want to know if we have a different definition, it's best to ask, because that makes the conversation a lot smoother.
Okay. Well, if what you mean by the universe is all of like space-time, right? Then yeah, I would agree that everything in the universe is a finite being.
well, not every. Are you saying everything in the universe is a being?
Well, yeah, everything in the universe exists. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the universe.
Okay.
So yeah, what I mean by being is just something that exists.
Mars is a being.
I'm sorry.
Mars is a being.
Yeah, I would say that.
Okay. Just clarifying what you meant by everything being a being. So it's not that things can't be done other ways. It's just that inside the universe they're not. And it's possible for things to exist outside the universe because that's the way God is described to you.
So, well, the reason why, so if you're defining the universe as all of space-time, and if God is not, part of the space-time continuum,
I'm
then
going
God
back.
would,
When I say universe, I'm just talking about the knowable universe, the one in which we occupy.
okay, well, I mean, that would beg the question, do you mean that God is unknowable? Because, well, so my position would be that God is knowable. So if what you mean is everything that's knowable, then I would have to include God in the universe. So you see, this is why it's important we're specific about the definition of the universe.
So long as you're okay with the notion that your God created the thing in which it exists.
And now I have a question. You said as long as you're going with the knowable, since knowledge is demonstrable, how would you demonstrate God?
Yeah, so the basic way is to point out that I mean, if you begin with so you guys asked about, or Ari asked about, like, the principle of causality and why things need causes. I think that it ultimately comes down to the idea that things that exist have to be distinguished from things that don't exist. In other words, there has to be a difference between something that exists and something that does not exist.
Sure. How do you do that?
So, well, I don't think that we do that. I think that things are inherently in themselves, if they exist, they're distinguished from non-existence.
How important can it be for us if we're not capable of making the distinction?
Well, we're also able to tell the difference, right? But what I'm talking about is like within the creature itself, it has to have that principle by which it is distinguished from nothing. So,
well, in order for it to be a thing, we have no example of nothing, first of all. So to say that it's got to be this thing so that it's nothing, sure, that's true, but we don't know that nothing is even possible.
Yeah, and that's fine. So all that I would claim is that something is not nothing, right? That's all that you have to accept to agree that there is a distinction between things that exist and things that do not exist. Basically, just accept the law of non-contradiction, right?
Sure, but then you said that you're not capable of telling the difference between the things that do and the things that don't. Is that right?
No. What I said was, what I was talking about with respect to the argument I was making is that inherently there is a difference between things that exist and things that don't exist. And it's not what I'm talking about is not about our ability to distinguish it in our mind, right? So I think there has to be a principle in each creature by which it is distinguished from nothing. And this is what I call existence. And that's sort of where I start. Does that kind of make sense?
Sure. But
Okay.
I was pretty sure you had said that we aren't the ones that can tell the difference between what exists and what doesn't.
I think we can tell the difference. I mean, one of the ways that we do tell, just to elaborate on this point, is that things that exist can affect us, right? If we can see it, then it exists.
Sure. How does that apply to your God?
So I mean, I think that once you have this principle that things are distinguished from nothing by existence, you have to ask, well, what is existence? And I think that existence has to be something that's completely simple, first of all, because
apparently it has to be able to have an effect on something.
Yeah, but it also has to be completely simple, because anything that's composed of parts depends upon its parts for its existence. And it would be circular to say that existence depends upon its parts for its existence. So existence itself has to be completely simple. Furthermore, I think that existence has this existence that causes the existence of things has to be completely one. And that's because anything that is differentiated has a part by which it is the same and a part by which it is different. So, for example, dogs are all the same in that they're dogs, but they're different in that they're composed of this particular matter over here rather than over there. So in order to distinguish between things, they have to have two principles, which existence can't. So what I get to here is something that's completely simple and one, which distinguishes everything else from non-existence, which is what I call God.
Wait, did you just say that you distinguish existence from non-existence and non-existence is God, or did I?
No. I distinguish things that exist from non-existence, and that distinguishing principle is what I call existence. And then I argue that existence itself has to be simple and one, and that's what I call God, the thing that distinguishes things from non-existence.
So the base component of being a thing is God. Broken down into its smallest pieces, you have God, and then the matter that apparently can't be part of a system and still have an effect on something, even though that's kind of necessary for atoms to have an effect.
So creatures participate in existence. They're caused to be different from nothing by existence, but creatures themselves are not like composed of God, because that would make God like able to, that would require multiple gods, right? You would have to have multiple existences, which
I think most of them would I think most Christians would just say that you have an omnipresent God.
Yeah, and why only creatures? I mean, don't rocks participate in existence, for
Right. Yeah,
instance?
that's what I mean. By creatures, I just mean something that's created by God. So which is just basically
Really
anything that.
interesting. I assume that you're a little more careful with.
Yeah.
Most
So,
people
I,
refer
I
to a being as being a distinct animal.
yeah,
And creatures
I would
almost animal.
I would also say so redefining words where you come up with a completely different definition than anyone else has. I mean that might work for you, but it's also not an honest way to go about this. So if you talk about creatures, we basically talk about living things that are not plants, for instance. So
Well, if you think
I wouldn't call a rock a creature or a drop of
right,
water a creature because
well,
I,
that
that
would,
would
would
I also wouldn't call it a woodland being.
no.
well, I mean, this is just semantics, right? The
No,
reason why the
no,
reason I use
it plays to the thing that I was insistent upon. The only thing I was insistent upon was being honest. And you, in at least two occasions now, with those two words, you've you've come clean with the fact that that's how you use them. But you're kind of stumbling with the fact that when we ask you to recognize that most of the world doesn't use those words that way, that you just accept that that's the case.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
my biggest problem would be if you're going to redefine words and then try to explain your position, you're going to throw off pretty much everyone because at the end no one will know what you're talking about. I mean, if you go out in the street and you decide from one day to another that you're going to call cars kafliffles, and you go up to any given person and say, "Hey, I can't find my kafliffle. It's red and it's got very big rims." No one will know what you're talking about. So why do you do that in this particular conversation? I don't see the point of redefining words.
I mean, I think it's probably a fair criticism that I should probably use words in accordance with how most people use it in order that more people could understand. That's probably a fair criticism.
Well,
But the
the
reason why
fact
I
is
use the word the reason
the fact is that words have usages. So and everyone
yeah,
is pretty much accustomed to the usage that we currently have, and
okay,
that
the reason I use the word that way is because that's sort of how it came about etymologically, as far as I'm, concerned, as far as I know, because
You're the,
creator, create, it comes from the word create, right?
you're the
It's just
second,
something that
you're
was
the
created.
second
That's what creature
person
means.
second person I've talked to on this show that has tried to trace words back to their root words and apply their usage of it based upon that. And that nobody does that. Nobody does that. Even dictionaries don't try to define words based upon the way roots are used, especially in English, where we take a Greek root and add Latin prefixes and suffixes to it. I mean, how do you handle a word like that? You obviously can't. So it's such a weird thing to cling to say I'm going back to the original usage, which I think is based upon this. It'd be more interesting if you went back to the Old English word for it.
yeah,
Well, I mean, if you want to,
I
that's
also have
fine.
a problem with if you're going back to creatures and the reason for that is because it means that it is created. That's something that you haven't demonstrated yet. So then we already sneak in creation, and if we go along with your definition of the word, then by definition we have snuck in creation, which I still have no evidence for that's even the case.
I'll admit that
Well,
you've got an interesting mix between what you used to believe and what you currently believe, and that's a pretty good indication of it right there.
well, I mean, I don't really care about the particular word. We could use a different word. Do you have a better word for everything but God?
I think
I'd
everything
I'd go
works.
I'd go with reality, but
Well,
that,
yeah, but that would beg the question. It would imply that God doesn't exist.
which until someone can demonstrate that God does exist is still the case, is still the most honest position to take.
Okay. Well, like I said, I mean, I think, I did just lay out an argument for that, and I would like to hear if you guys have any objections. So,
Well,
Yeah,
well,
I don't think anything you said that was necessary. This is necessary, and this has to happen. I don't think any of that shit was true.
no.
All you did was declare it.
Yeah. So
okay.
what you made was not an argument; it was an assertion. It becomes an argument when you can actually back up the premises that you give in your particular argument. And so far, you haven't backed anything up in your argument.
Okay. Well, we can start with the first premise if you want.
Go ahead.
I mean, so my first premise is that whatever exists must have that in virtue of which it's distinguished from nothing in itself.
Okay, you're already gonna have to start defining words. What the fuck is in virtue?
Okay, you could, instead of in virtue, you could say by which. So whatever exists has.
By which are the same thing, and you used in virtue.
I'm actually quoting a philosopher.
So it would have to be in virtue
so-
of if you were using modern English.
That's what my argument is, in virtue of. So all I'm saying is that things have to have that by which, if that's the word you want to use, thing by which they are distinguished from nothing in itself or in another. So that's the first premise. Any problems with that one?
Nope.
I have one problem. I have no clue what a nothing is.
So nothing is the opposite of something.
Yes,
what
but
is it?
I still don't have a clue what a nothing is.
Is there an example of nothing?
It's no, there's not an example of nothing. It's the negation of something.
Well, that would be a non thing.
So if there's no example, if you don't even know what a nothing is, why would we need to distinguish something that exists from nothing, which we don't know exists? And if nothing would exist, it wouldn't be nothing, because it would exist.
I could give you an example of nothing. A married bachelor. A married bachelor is nothing because it's something that cannot exist.
It's something.
Actually, it can exist. Actually, it can exist. You can have a bachelor in something and get married, so you're still a married bachelor.
You also said it's something that can't exist, and that in and of itself demonstrates that it now is a thing. It is an unrealizable idea.
It's a negation.
It's still a thing.
So, like, it's if you take 1 minus 1, it equals 0. That doesn't imply that I'm saying that 1 and 1 exist, right? It's a negation.
Well, I don't tend to think that 0 is nothing.
No, 0 isn't nothing. So numbers are description we made up to explain our universe. So it's a man-made construct.
Sure.
So
is nothing. I mean, nothing isn't something that exists, right? It's just us saying, well, this thing does not exist. Therefore, we call that nothing. It's not something that exists. Unicorns don't exist. It's not a thing. It's nothing.
Actually, unicorns do exist.
In paintings, and
not only that, in real life as well, in Africa.
Now, okay, how are you using the word thing?
So yeah, I mean, thing would be something that exists, but in my sentence, what I'm doing is negating it.
But
negating.
Do ideas exist? Do negations exist?
In a sense, they exist, but whenever we say
in the sense of that's how we're going to use the word, or in the sense that you were going to use the word differently?
whenever we say unicorns don't exist, or don't say unicorns, say, I don't know, God. Whenever we say God doesn't exist, we're not saying that it doesn't exist in our mind, right? That's not what we mean, obviously.
Okay, but God is a very specific thing, not the difference between a thing and nothing.
So all that I mean by nothing is something that doesn't exist.
That's
Okay.
again, that's
So
right.
I still don't see why this is something
No.
that is necessary.
It's apparently it's necessary, but let's just roll with it. Let's
Yeah. Okay.
for the sake of argument, yeah, okay. It's necessary that be a thing that can be distinguished.
Okay.
What's your second premise?
So the second premise would be that nothing cannot distinguish something from nothing.
That's just gibberish.
Yeah, that's word salad to me. I have no clue what that means.
So
We don't have a nothing. So a nothing.
This would be the point to abandon the script and just say what the conclusion of what the actual essence of that sentence is.
Yeah,
that sentence actually means what to you?
So whenever I was talking earlier about how things have to be distinguished, right, from nothing, all I'm saying is that you can't take nothing and have it distinguish something from nothing, which it seems like you guys agree with, because you're saying, well, nothing isn't a thing.
Yeah,
right.
Which makes that just let's just scratch that one off.
So yeah, I'm curious, if nothing doesn't exist, why even bring it up in the second premise?
Yeah, it's
something that doesn't exist doesn't exist. Period. There are no other attributes than it not existing.
It's like your second premise might as well be a pencil is not a pen.
Right. Yeah. Well, the reason why I say that is because some atheists in the past that I've argued with claim that something could come from nothing.
Yeah, so, I think that is you misunderstanding what Lawrence Krauss said, and I think in order to understand that, I think you should study it, read his book, because in his book he gives 3 different examples of nothing.
Right, I've read his book.
Yeah, I'd say that's a terrible argument to throw in, because if you want to throw that in, so the energy count of our known universe is 0, and you could say 0 is nothing.
Okay, I mean,
so it gets us no closer to a God.
Yeah. If especially if you're using nothing to mean the just a thing that isn't.
So, okay, yeah. So it sounds like we agree. So
yeah, we agree that premise was absolutely unnecessary, and it means every bit as much as a pen is not a pencil.
Fair enough. So let's move on to the third one then. So the third premise is that besides existence, there is nothing. Anything that's not existence.
Why are we stuck on nothing when we already agreed that nothing doesn't exist? So
nothing doesn't negate dying.
Yeah, what? It's another non-agreement, a non-premise. It's you saying black isn't white. Yeah, we already agreed on that in the first premise. You're just repeating the same premise with different words.
Well, so okay, well then let's just go to my conclusion. The conclusion, we'll see if you agree with this, is that the only thing that can distinguish something from nothing is existence.
No. It would have to be a thing in existence.
So that's where
it would have to be a sentient thing.
I would say intelligence distinguishes something from nothing. or a mind.
It'd be the only thing that could make the distinction of the thing that is necessary to make that necessarily exists. No, that's
I don't see rocks. I don't see rocks going around distinguishing something from nothing.
Do you think that mind and like outside of our minds
I
that
think
things exist?
No.
I think your argument is actually just too.
No,
close.
a mind is a brain state. So we have no examples of minds that exist outside of a brain.
Well, yeah, but do things exist outside of our minds?
Obviously.
Yes.
Okay, so then they are like without us thinking about it. Like if we didn't exist, if no minds existed, they would in themselves be different from nothing.
Can we, just for a second.
We're back to
wait, hang on. What is the conclusion? What is the conclusion of that argument supposed to mean?
Yeah, and then we're back to nothing. What you're basically saying is reality is real, period. And now we have gotten no step further towards a God. We only have the atheist point of view that what can demonstrate it to be real is real.
Okay, the conclusion was that only existence can distinguish something from nothing.
Yeah, that's existence is an idea.
Yeah, and distinguishing something from nothing is also an idea. So if all life would end this moment, the universe would still exist, but there would be nothing to distinguish it from nothing.
So if existence were merely an idea, then nothing would exist because there would be nothing to distinguish something from nothing.
Hold on, that's not what I said. I said if every living thing in the universe would die right now, the universe would still be there.
Right.
So there would still be existence without anything able to distinguish it from nothing.
Right, but whenever I'm not talking about like in your mind distinguishing something from nothing. That's what I've been trying to, I started out with that.
But actually you are, because your final premise was that there needs to be something that distinguishes something from nothing. And I just showed you that that's not necessary.
So let me
your conclusion is unnecessary.
The conclusion doesn't even follow the premises.
No.
Maybe if I make an analogy, it'll help.
Maybe I'll abandon this argument because it's really shite.
So for example, right, I have a blue water bottle right here, right? So a blue water bottle is different from a red water bottle. And in virtue of what is it different from a red water bottle? Well, it has blue paint. So a blue water bottle is distinguished from a red water bottle by its blue paint. In a similar way, whenever I say distinguish from nothing, I'm saying that existence instead of the paint, right, in this analogy, is what distinguishes something from nothing. I'm not talking about like in your mind. I'm talking about in reality, what makes something different from nothing.
Why are we still stuck on nothing? We're talking about something that doesn't exist.
I'm so fucking lost, man.
I mean, if we just agree that what exists is part of reality, and we can demonstrate that it exists, and if we cannot demonstrate that it exists, it's not part of reality. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But you have to come up with a way to prove that it does exist. So let's drop the whole nothing thing, because that's absolutely nothing to talk about. No pun intended. But it doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't get you any step closer to a God. And what I would be interested in is how you would demonstrate that a God exists. And so far, all you have done is trying to demonstrate that nothing is a thing, which it isn't.
Well, that's not what I was arguing, but the reason why I have to talk about nothing is because what we're asking is, why does something exist?
First of all, who's we?
Yeah, I'm not
Only us? All of us are asking this.
Well, should you ask why things exist?
Why would you tell me what I should or shouldn't ask?
I'm asking you. Should you ask whether or not something?
I'm
or
fine.
why
I'm fine
No,
with
I-
things.
I-
I'm fine with things existing.
I think it's pretentious as shit to think that somebody ought to ask questions that you think are important.
Well, I'm fine with that. I don't have any problem with being pretentious at all. So look, I
At
think
least it's the honesty thing.
so. Here's the thing. So you're saying that things just exist and there's no explanation, right?
How did you get that?
That's
anything
not.
that was-
That's the opposite of what I said.
Okay.
You are
So
now
think-
you are now switching from the why to the how.
And you're also gone from not making your bad argument to assuming that someone else has made one that you should attack. At least you've
So-
given up your shit argument, because that thing was.
I certainly have not.
Rotting dog.
So okay. Why does something exist right now? Let's try to approach it that way.
I don't know.
Why
does it matter?
why would we even ask that?
Well, because we're curious human beings and we want to understand things.
Then my question would be, how does something exist?
Okay. We can ask that.
Not why, because the why implies that there is a goal, that there was intent. It is a loaded question.
Okay, we can use how. How is it that something exists?
Yes, and the honest answer is we don't know.
I don't know.
Do you know?
Okay. There are two options. There are two options.
Oh, I feel like there's a false dichotomy about to come.
Okay. Either a thing exists by itself or by another. There are two options. So which one would you say?
I already said we don't know.
And how do you know that those are the only two options?
Yes.
Well, other than by itself and by another would be nothing, right?
And we're
Something
back
that maybe pops into existence.
So
Yeah.
you could say that, yeah.
like
So-
nanoparticles that pop in
Like
and
the
out
things
of
we know that
existence.
pop in and out of existence. Those things.
Right. Yeah, you could say that.
So
Those exist.
so at some point they exist and at some point they don't exist. They pop in
Uh-huh.
and out of existence.
But that still doesn't explain how they exist now.
Well, you're assuming that there's something that's creating them and then uncreating them.
Yeah,
And
you're,
creating
you're,
them and
you're
uncreating.
assuming that you know how. We already told you we do not know how.
Well, it's either in virtue of itself or in virtue of another. Or
Again,
by
yes,
itself
you keep
or by
saying that,
another.
and like I said when you started this, I felt like there was a false dichotomy coming,
Yeah.
and there was. There's
So-
a thing.
It's
Oh,
like saying
there's
it's like saying
that pop in and out of existence.
it's like saying my car is either black or it isn't. It's a great piece of information. It doesn't tell you what color car my car is. It doesn't even tell you if I have a car.
So, well, here's how you go about it, right? So, if it's not by itself, then it's by another. Okay, and then you can ask, okay, well, there's other thing, right?
No, you can't
that this
ask.
thing
You
exists by.
hold on. You can't ask that.
Maybe-
First,
well,
you
maybe
have to
evidence.
demonstrate that it was by another, and then you
Okay.
can go. And then you go the step further. So please demonstrate that it is by another and not by itself.
All right. Well, we have to start with one of them in order to analyze whether or not
Why?
the possibilities are
Why do
possible.
why do we have to start with one of them? If you have two options, the honest thing would be to go with the evidence that you have and come and go to the most correct of the two options. So we don't just arbitrarily go to one of the two.
Well, I'm just analyzing which one's possible, and I can't analyze whether or not they're both possible at the same time, so I have to start with one of them. So,
Do you do
so the
that?
reason,
Well, hold on. Do you do that in daily life too? Because you can cross the street and either get run over by a car or not run over by a car. So you arbitrarily cross the street just to see what happens. I wouldn't advise that.
no, but you look at, you look both ways, and you say,
And
well,
why
there's no
don't
car
you
here, so it's probably
then
not
why
going to be that.
then why don't you look both ways before you go to your second argument that you have no reason to go to so far?
So if you want to talk about the first one of those two options, the thing existing in itself, the problem, again, as I've mentioned, is that these things that we're talking about, they're limited beings, are composed of parts. So
Yes.
they don't exist. So whatever is composed of parts depends upon its parts for its existence. Because if you take away a part,
So
the parts will still
hold on,
exist.
hold
The
on.
whole will not
You're
exist.
you're Catholic, right?
Yep.
Also, so you're acquainted with a guy called Lemaitre?
I don't really remember who that is. No,
That's the guy who
it
came.
sounds familiar.
That's the guy who came up with the Big Bang Theory.
Oh, that guy. Yeah, I know who he is. Yeah.
So we can only go back to Planck time. You know that there were a lot of elements that didn't exist at Planck time,
Yeah.
and you know that we got all of these elements over time as the universe expanded and as suns formed and different elements were formed under different conditions. You know all of that. So we got elements that didn't exist and now do exist
Right.
without someone causing it.
I mean, that's kind of begging the question, but yeah, I know what you're talking about. I accept general, evolution and also cosmology that's supported by
Okay,
scientists
I
today.
was I was just checking because you are still hung up with this the nothing thing that we shouldn't talk about because it doesn't exist. So
Well, what I was saying.
things came into existence by a process that unfolded as the universe expanded.
Okay, but if you talk about anything that exists right now, such as a cell phone, right? It's composed of parts, right? It has a processor, a hard drive, or a flash drive, whatever, right? It depends upon those parts for its existence. So it cannot. So to claim that it
It
exists
doesn't.
of itself,
It doesn't.
so you can have
I
a
I s- I
phone
s- I,
without
s-
the
I
parts.
smashed my cell phone a while back, and the screen shattered and completely fell out, and the cell phone still existed. It just didn't have a screen anymore.
Right. But if you remove,
I can take a wheel off my car. It's still a car.
yeah, but if you remove all of its parts, it's not going to be a cell phone anymore,
Okay, so
right?
what?
So a cell phone
Then
depends
it's
upon its parts for its existence.
yeah. So what?
So it doesn't exist in virtue of itself.
So what?
So that was the first
I
option.
still don't see where we're going.
That's literally true of everything except for the smallest nanoparticles.
Yes,
So so
which we don't know exist and we haven't named yet
Those
because
things that
uh
pop in and out of existence, those things, that's the only thing your premise applies to.
yes.
well, remember we were asking whether something exists in virtue of itself or in virtue of another.
No,
And what I
no,
just
no, no,
showed,
no,
what
no.
I
Sorry,
just
no,
showed,
sorry,
Wait,
sorry,
what?
sorry, no, sorry. That was your response to us asking, "How do we get to a God?" And then you came up with all kinds of premises that didn't work, and then you came up with a redefining words that didn't work, and
but
we still have no clue how we get to a God, and we still
but
don't even know.
Well, I,
You haven't even defined your God yet.
Peter, I think what he's trying to say is that the thing in the universe that causes all things to exist or not exist, and specifically to the level of quarks and shit like that, is those things that pop into and out of existence and pop into and out of existence trillions of times a nanosecond. There's an intelligence behind that, and that's the thing he's calling God.
So if I'm allowed to like finish what I was saying.
Well, I assume that's what you meant, because otherwise your shit didn't make any sense.
What I was saying was that, so you said, well, maybe things exist in virtue of themselves, and what I said is, well, not if they're composed of parts.
I didn't say that. I didn't say
Well,
that. You went straight to the opposite, and I asked you to give me a reason why. And
Right,
and now you're trying to debunk the other side of the argument, which isn't working. I'm still at a loss why you think this is necessary to get to some kind of demonstration of a God, because I still don't.
So because my position on God is that he's absolutely simple. God is just existence itself. That's God's essence, is existence. So what I'm doing is I'm showing that anything that's composed of parts depends on something else.
So you are not a Catholic. You have a completely different definition. You have your own definition of God. You are literally the only one on the planet with this definition of God. And you call yourself a Catholic? Why?
So
exactly?
The Catholic Encyclopedia says finite beings are defined by their essence. God can only be defined by being, pure and simple, nothing less and nothing more. And the Catechism of the Catholic Church says similar things based upon Exodus 3:14. So divine simplicity is actually a very well-established doctrine inside the Catholic Church.
Does the Catholic Bible define attributes of God?
It does, but the Bible isn't a metaphysical text, so we can't take it that seriously.
I agree. We can't take it seriously. So you're a Catholic. You're a Catholic, and you think the Bible's not important. I'm trying to wrap my head around this, and it's starting to hurt.
I'll admit you threw a word out there that I wasn't familiar with, but where are you going to church?
I go to a Catholic mass, and so, I mean, this is basic teaching of St. Thomas Aquinas, and
let me explain something to you. The largest half of my family is Catholic, and I have never once, in all the theological conversations I've had with my cousins when we get drunk together, heard Aquinas' name brought up, except as a rival school and a party that the church throws every summer. I know who he is, but you're speaking of him as if he's a pillar of Catholicism.
An authority on what God is.
Well,
an almost necessary tenet of Catholicism are the teachings of St. Thomas Aquinas, and I don't think he's quite that important among most Catholics.
So he's known by the Catholic Church as the universal doctor of the Church. He also has been recommended. He's been recommended by several popes as the main, the way that you should go. Thomism is not the official philosophy of the Catholic Church. However, it is pretty high up there in reverence within the Catholic Church.
I've always thought that was because St. Thomas Aquinas at least tried to make philosophical arguments based upon logic as best he could, and that set him apart from most other priests at the time.
No, I don't think so. I mean, St. Augustine also made arguments as well, and so did Anselm and other people around that time. So I think that what made St. Thomas Aquinas unique was that he came about whenever the Western world was rediscovering the works of Aristotle, and what he did is he united Catholic teaching with the teaching of Aristotle.
Was that argument you made earlier, was that Aquinas?
So I reformulated it, but it comes from Aquinas' work on being in essence.
I'm a little bit scared to
Well,
ask.
that never was an argument for God. That was some kind of a description for being in essence. That's no wonder it sounded like Descartes. It sounded like a fucking literal fucking opium pipe dream.
And so I'm still completely confused where we're going, because if God is only an essence, then why does he need worshiping? How does he interact with reality? How can an essence interact with reality?
And you remember that you said that things that exist have an effect.
Yes.
Well, I didn't say only essence. I said that his essence is existence. So essence is just what a thing is. So what God is existence.
I'm curious. I exist. Therefore, my essence is existence.
I'm sorry. I'm having a Dark Crystal flashback. If none of you have seen that movie.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around why this is even important.
Yeah, so I would say that you are not existence. You exist, but you're not identical to existence.
Yeah, but that's not what I said. I said I exist, therefore is my essence existence.
Right. No, it's not.
Why not?
Because an essence is what a thing is. And what you are is a human being. You're not existence.
If an essence is what a being is, and you say God's essence is existence, then he's nothing except existence.
Right. That's what the
so
Catholic Church
he can't interact with this world because he's just existence.
Well, that doesn't follow.
Yes, that does follow, because you just told me my essence isn't existence because I just exist. And now you say God's essence is existence. So how can God exist and have an essence of existence? And how can I exist and do not have that essence of existence? What's the difference here?
You do not have way.
So, I mean, what you're doing there is affirming the consequence.
No, I'm asking a question. Yeah,
well, you're concluding that because you exist, but you're not existence. Therefore, God.
I didn't conclude anything. I asked you a question. I exist, but my essence is not existence. God exists, and his essence is existence. What distinguishes me from God?
Well, what distinguishes you from God is that you're not identical to existence.
Nor is God, because you said there are more attributes to God than existence. Because God can interact with this world, so he's not just existence, correct?
Yeah, is God limited to existence, or can God choose to not exist?
Well, obviously, God can't choose not to exist. Can I address what he just said, though?
No, wait.
Audie,
you saying obviously about a question about God is always going to be a what the fuck, but yeah, go ahead.
Let him address this, because I want to know what the difference between me and God is.
Yeah, so remember what I was saying. How do we know that something exists, right? We know that something exists because it affects us.
No,
because we can see it.
No, not because we can see it, because we can't see atoms, we can't see quarks. And we know they exist. We can't see air. We know that it exists. So
yeah, but
existence,
they affect other things.
No. No, they don't. There's a rock outside my house. Doesn't affect a thing.
Virtually no effect.
Has no effect whatsoever.
Okay, so does light bounce off of the rock?
Is that
Yeah.
a conscious thing?
Yeah, I mean, is that
something that requires a conscious?
Is the rock actively bouncing the light off, or is it just an attribute of light to bounce off of things?
I mean,
Are there more than one atom involved in reflecting the light? Because otherwise, because systems don't work. They're dependent upon each part.
Yeah.
So
What you're trying to do.
together to reflect light?
What you're trying to do now is put the attribute of light onto the rock, which is false.
all I'm trying to say is that if something affects us or affects other things around us, or affects anything, we know that has to exist, right?
Okay. So explain.
No,
Explain.
Hold
Hold on. Explain. Explain to me.
That's a far cry from what he'd said before.
Yeah. I'm curious now. How does the Andromeda galaxy affect us on a daily basis?
I'm not saying that it has to affect us. All I'm saying is that
you just made a premise, and within seconds you say that premise was faulty.
You had just said affects us.
I would agree.
I said if it affects us, or if it affects anything else.
Why wouldn't we?
Then it must exist.
Tom, why wouldn't we just say reality is what we can demonstrate to be real? Wouldn't that be a lot easier? And wouldn't?
Do you disagree?
What's the shortcoming in that definition, according to you?
Yeah.
I mean, you can define it that way, but I don't see how that refutes my definition.
That is the common definition of reality. That's how we define reality.
That which comports to nature.
That's currently working around the planet. So why should we go to something completely different, which you can't even demonstrate to be correct, and already have agreed that it is faulty in certain examples?
But do you agree though that if something is affecting another thing, that thing has to exist?
Physically?
So what you're going wrong with is that things exist without affecting something else. It depends on the something else that is affected.
That's fine. Let's suppose that there could be something.
Everything we can demonstrate to be real is real. Even if it doesn't affect me, it is still real. Even if it doesn't affect you, it's still real. If it doesn't affect the Andromeda galaxy, it is still real. So your premise is useless because we've got a better one.
Let's assume that things can exist without affecting anything.
Okay.
That does not. So that doesn't mean that things can affect things without existing, right?
So wait, hang on. In your definition of things that exist, is love a thing that exists? Or ideas, things that exist?
Yes, I would say that in a sense, yes.
So now the definition of exists and things includes more things than it used to.
Yeah, because now it includes brain states.
Are you going to answer my question?
I'm really curious to hear what your answer is.
I'd like to hear the answer to my question first. Can things affect things without existing?
Yes, apparently, until we get a definition of what is a thing that exists. Yes.
Yes.
Of course they can.
You still haven't come up with a working definition of what exists.
So what I was
that's why I threw in how we determine reality. In
Look, what I'm try-
reality, the things that exist, we can demonstrate that they exist. There might be things that exist that we haven't demonstrated yet.
what I was trying to get to, okay, is that since things cannot act on other things without existing, what existence is, in part, not in total, is a principle for action. Hence, since God is existence, God would also be a principle for action, which means that God can act on things.
If God is existence, God can't act at all.
How does that follow?
Because he doesn't have an attribute to act.
But if existence is the principle for action,
yes,
and God is existence,
yes, if I call a dog a cat, then my dog's a cat. But that's not how things work.
okay, but I just explained why existence is the principle of action.
What you did is that you explained that you're using a word in a way that no one else uses that particular word. And so by you redefining the word, you can now slip in what you think is actually true. And you haven't demonstrated a single thing yet. All you have done is throw out assertions, and each and every time we've asked you to back those up, you go back to other assertions.
I totally disagree. I think that most people would say that if something is affecting something, then it exists. They don't think that, as I was trying to demonstrate,
yes,
the
and
other
if
argument,
something
apparently it went over your head.
And if something exists and doesn't affect anything, it still exists.
That's fine. That would just be
yes, that too.
What you're trying to do. You're affirming the consequent. Just because something cannot exist without.
I'm pointing out how utterly useless this argument is to get to a God. A God either exists or he doesn't. I don't care if his essence is existence, because if he exists, then you have a way of demonstrating that he does.
Right.
And that is the part that you're tap dancing around. You don't want to get to that particular part. And my question would be, why?
So, I mean, I could, but I think you'll probably just interrupt me again, to be honest. I mean,
I only interrupt you for clarification, that's all. So go ahead.
I understand.
Go ahead.
That's fine.
Go ahead and demonstrate God exists.
So look. So I started with this principle, right? That, okay, things have to be distinguished. Things have to be distinguished so that they're different from nothing, right? That's what I started with. What I claimed is that so things are either
you're still not anywhere close to a demonstration.
Let him go.
Yeah, can you just let me finish?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, okay,
we're at an hour and 15 minutes. Let's see if we can get him to finish the thought. We'll just let him go, and we already understand that we're probably going to have problems with how he's using words and shit. Just let that go, and we'll deal with it after he's got it all out of his system.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I said is that, okay, things either exist in virtue of itself or in virtue of another. Now, if it exists in virtue of itself, it cannot be composed of parts. And the reason for that is because anything that's composed of parts depends upon its parts for its existence. So therefore, it has to exist anything that's composed of parts has to exist in virtue of another. Okay, so if we say, okay, well, this other thing that exists, is that thing composed of parts? If it is composed of parts, then it also has to exist in virtue of another. And we go on and on and on until we get to something. So this series is either infinitely long or it's finite. If it's finite, we're going to get to something that is just simple, that's not composed of parts. So if it's simple, it can only be one thing. And if it's not existence,
I got it.
then it doesn't exist. But if it is existence,
I got it.
Then it's
I got it.
you know,
It's
God.
It's a brilliant new way of God of the gaps. We go back and back and back and back and back until we can't explain it anymore, and then we throw in God.
First, I didn't think it was that brilliant. Second,
well,
Second,
it is brilliant. It is brilliant in a way that it kept us an hour and 15 minutes trying to get to it.
But it's a long walk to an idea of God being one thing, which you said he wasn't just one thing, but then you argued vehemently just now that he was just one thing, existence.
Yeah, and it doesn't. And I got a surprise for you, because it doesn't end with God, because you already said that God is the essence of God is existence, and he has more components, more attributes.
Yeah.
So your God is not the end. So what created your God?
Yeah, I don't think that God has attributes. I think that whenever we talk about.
So hold on. The
Existence
essence. Wait a minute. I'm going to clear this up by just naming two. His essence is existence, and he has the power to create. Now he has two attributes.
Right, but
two
like
components.
I said, I think that existence is the principle of action. So
yeah, I know you like to redefine. I know you like to redefine words, but you have to demonstrate that. And what what you do is restate it and restate it and restate, and you have done that for an hour and 15 minutes. Every single time we ask you to demonstrate something, you restate it and then say, "Well, I just did it." No.
How does existence have
presenting
existence? Have a child.
Presenting an argument is not a demonstration. I know you redefine words, but it still isn't.
So the way that I argued for existence being the principle of action, once again, is that things cannot act without existence. Hence, existence is the principle of action.
You keep reading that, but we've already discussed the fact that nanoparticles pop into and out of existence, and your explanation for that is a being that's... Actually, it's not even a being, because it's just existence. So what you're saying is that existence consciously causes those things to pop in and out of existence. And because those things happen to be things and part of a larger thing, that's evidence that atoms have been created necessarily by this existence.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I don't think that. I mean, at least I don't claim. I don't know how. Nobody knows how this quantum physics works completely, but I don't claim that God is there causing virtual particles to come in and out of existence. All that I claim is that God distinguishes virtual particles from nothing, which is a totally different thing.
No.
Can you demonstrate? Can you demonstrate?
Distinguish.
Can you demonstrate this? How does God distinguish one from the other? How does he do that?
I think you're confusing what I mean by distinguish once again.
That's because no one has a clue. That's because no one has a clue of your particular definition of a word.
No, you're using distinguish as a verb. He's using it as a way to describe two dissimilar things.
Okay, might be a language problem.
A person can be a distinguished gentleman. Has nothing to do with the necessity of somebody making the distinguishing. Yeah, let's not get carried away. You got a boot hanging around your neck.
Okay, I'll wear my boot there.
Certainly noteworthy, but I don't know about distinguished.
I think we've gone through this argument quite a bit, and I mean, is there anything else you guys want to talk about? Because
hold on. Did you hear what you just said?
Yeah, it kept calling this thing we've been doing an argument.
Yes, and we asked for a demonstration. Do you Can you distinguish between argument and demonstration? Sorry, no pun intended.
You have spent a lot of time learning the vocabulary of someone
Human
who has
beings.
studied enough philosophy and to know, to have learned, been taught, whatever the language. But dude, the your paraphrasing of what apparently was an Aquinas argument, that thing was horrifying. That was a claim followed by a statement, followed by insight to the obvious, to quote my dad, followed by another piece of insight to the obvious, followed by a conclusion that didn't really follow the premises in the first place.
No. And we got a brilliant.
We made a lot of comments about a lot of things.
We got a brilliant thing in the side chat, Artie.
With that argument.
Artie, we got a brilliant thing in the side chat. Howard Chan said existence doesn't exist. And I would agree with him. Existence doesn't exist as a thing. It is a description that we came up with.
It only applies to things
that exist.
Which
the essence of things is exist. There. Things is more basic than your God.
Yeah.
Well, if you say that things are identical to existence, so like if a dog,
I said necessary.
No, what I'm trying to explain, that existence, we can swap existence for blue. You can say God's essence is blue. Well, great. But what is blue? Can you give me half an ounce of blue? Can you give me a drop of blue? A cup of blue?
I'm tangled up in blue.
You can have blue in your mind as a concept. But I don't know what this has to do with anything.
Well, apparently that's existence. That's a thing that exists.
Artie, your camera is out.
I know.
So it is a concept. It is a description that we came up with to describe reality. So what you are saying is that God is a description we came up with to describe reality. So that literally means that your God is nothing, doesn't exist.
I don't think that you can have descriptions. I mean, you can have descriptions of things that exist, but they wouldn't be descriptions of reality if they don't exist. So if you're going to say that existence doesn't exist, and you're saying that it doesn't exist in reality, which is like incoherent.
Artie, can you refresh the screen or refresh the Hangout so your camera's back?
Yeah, hang on just a second.
Okay.
I turn it off. We're okay.
I'll switch it to a single screen. So, boy, if the only attributes that God has are descriptions that are man-made, then by definition God is man-made. Now we know.
I don't know about that, because
existence is a description. Artie, your camera's still off. This existence is a description that is man-made.
But I mean, so is like our description of a dog. You know, the descriptions are man-made.
And so is our description of a God, and so is our description of Harry Potter. So now tell me that Harry Potter and God are different. Why?
Well, like I said, we've been through this argument. I don't really feel like repeating myself. I think we haven't this horse to death.
We haven't even touched on this argument. That's the problem.
Well, he's relying on the fact that anybody should be willing to accept that a thing can be existence. That existence in and of itself is a thing, and that thing is God. That is not an explanation for any of what he might otherwise claim that God has done or is capable of. because if you throw the word existence in where most Christians use God or Jesus or Aquinas himself, it doesn't fucking work anymore. And it's a huge challenge to try to suggest that what I meant to say was this thing, but what I'm feeling is this. God is existence, but he's also all these other things. But then you argue vehemently that God is just this one thing until it becomes necessary to admit that God has to have other things about it in order for it to be God. Otherwise, it's just existence, which is only a thing used to describe things.
If you guys are interested in looking up this later, this position is called classical theism.
Seriously.
And the view of classical theism is
why would we
that
hold on? Why would we need to look it up?
if you want to understand the position better.
No.
So it is not.
And I'm
about-
also talking to your audience as well.
Let's say we were to go and look it up. I'm pretty sure what we would find would be something completely different than what you found. Because you have redefined so many words in order to fit into your idea of what you think a God should be, that you're not even certain yourself. You can't even define your own God. Let's go to a very simple thing. So the essence of God is existence. Define your God further. And don't go to arguments because this, therefore that. Define your God first. Because you haven't done that yet.
I continue to maintain that God's essence is existence, and so I know what you're stuck up on is the descriptions of God as intelligent.
Do you know what define? Do you know what
God
define means? Or do you have another definition for the word define?
I think generally the Christian God is seen as a God that's an active God, because basically what you're describing is deism.
Yes.
And most people treat the Christian God as an intervening God, which is why people pray. Christians, Catholics do that a lot of praying.
I'll help you. I'll help you with the I'll help you with the definition. Can God hear your prayer?
I would say I think that God doesn't hear them, but he knows in a different way.
How can existence have knowledge?
So look, this is what I was trying to get to with classical theism. We don't say that God has knowledge per se, like in the same way that we do. What God has knowledge in an analogous way. And this ultimately comes from God's immateriality.
What does it mean to have knowledge that isn't knowledge?
Well, it is knowledge, but
you said
it's analogous to our knowledge. It's not in the same way we do.
In what way is the word knowledge analogous to the word knowledge?
Yes, and in what way is knowledge different from knowledge?
So let me give an example.
Please.
So you can have a good dog, right? And you can also have a good pen. They're both good, but they're good in different ways. This is what we call an analogy.
Yes.
It's not that neither of them are. It's not like they're different.
And I can know that, and I can know that I have a dog, and I can know that I have a good pen, and it still comes back to the same knowledge.
Analogy.
Your analogy doesn't work. And you have now redefined knowledge to be something that it isn't.
What I did is I showed an example of analogy. Analogy does not mean
I have a good pen are not analogous.
No. What we asked is, how is knowledge different from knowledge?
Oh, wait a minute. Did you say pet or pen?
Pen.
I said pen.
Okay, then that's not an analogy.
No.
It's a very typical analogy in Thomistic
analogous.
philosophy.
one thing can be applied to the other thing in the same way. That's an analogy. Using the word good.
No, that's univocal. Whenever you use the words in exactly the same way, in the same sense, that would be a univocal predication.
Not what I just said.
I'm still confused. I'm still confused that you can take the question, how is knowledge different from knowledge, and even try to answer that. How's
a misunderstanding of what I'm saying? I didn't say that they're different. I said they're analogous.
How is this lighter different from this lighter? This one. How's this lighter different from this lighter?
It's not.
Is this beer bottle analogous to this lighter?
It depends on what you're trying to talk
you're
about.
Not using the word analogous, right?
Yes.
It's whenever you use a word to apply to two different things in different senses. That would be analogy.
Action that can be applied to two different things in the same way.
So, can we get back to the description of God? So God can have knowledge. I'll whatever knowledge is. So the essence of God is existence, and he can have knowledge. He can't hear, so he's deaf. But he has other ways of communicating or picking things up. Can he interact with reality?
So to clear up the knowledge thing,
that's a yes or no.
God,
that's a yes or no question. Can you?
I don't do yes or no questions.
Okay, so but if you're not willing to answer questions, how are we going to get anywhere? Because we're already past the knowledge. I gave you that. That was my present to you. We'll go with your whatever definition of knowledge you have.
He said half an hour ago that it didn't bother him to be like that.
No, and so can God interact with reality? That's a simple yes or no question. There are no other answers. Either he can or he cannot.
God can act on the world. The world cannot act on God.
How?
It's great that you now come up with a question that I didn't ask. I said, can God interact with reality?
Because it's a loaded question. That's the problem.
No, it's not a loaded question because we are in reality. Can God do something to change in this reality? Can he perform miracles?
Yes, he can do that.
See, it wasn't that hard.
So
if you just stick to what the words actually mean, it's not so hard to have a conversation. If you're going to change the words and not tell us how you change them, then we're going to run into a problem. So
existence can perform miracles.
Yes.
Yeah, it can distinguish anything from nothing.
No. Existence can perform miracles, is what you just said.
Yes.
Right. Which a miracle is simply distinguishing something from nothing.
That's a miracle?
Yeah.
So distinguish between two things is a miracle.
I think you already explained that that's not what I mean.
Yeah, but now at this point, you are using it two different ways.
Yes.
So like whenever Jesus turned water into wine, for example, right?
Nope. Existence did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus was a person. A person is an existence.
Right. He did it through the power of God, which
he did through the power of existence.
Which is what I define as God. And he did that by distinguishing, water from wine with respect to existence.
Actually, it's not distinguishing because
you are not wording
wine,
dude.
Wine is partially water, but there are other ingredients, so it's not just a distinction. He added something.
Well, the typical claim is that he turned water into wine. So,
yes, which means that we have water, and then Jesus put in the ingredients, so it now is wine. Correct?
That could have been the way it works. I mean, maybe he
Is
distinguished.
there another way it would work?
Wait, can I just ask one basic Catholic question?
Sure.
Do you believe in literal transubstantiation?
Yeah, I do believe in that.
You believe that you're eating flesh when you eat a cracker and that you're drinking blood when you drink wine?
I believe that the substance is that of body and blood.
How is that different from what I said?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes. So, people sometimes get confused. I don't know what your background is on this.
I've been confused for an hour and a half.
They think that what I mean is, like, so that it, you know, it still looks like bread, right? It still has all of the properties of being bread.
Okay, then that's not what I'm calling transubstantiation, because it's literally transubstantiates into something that literally isn't bread anymore. That's what transubstantiation means.
Well, it has to do with the substance. That's why it's called transubstantiation.
Right. The substance changes, so it can't still be bread.
Yeah.
But its properties can be, because inside of scholastic philosophy,
how do you describe something aside from its properties?
By its essence.
Isn't that a description of its essence?
No, inside of scholastic philosophy, properties flow from.
How do you decide? How do you determine the difference between a description and essence?
I'm just curious. So, according to you, bread has the same substance as flesh, because I'm pretty sure it doesn't.
In this one special case, yes.
In this, even in this one special case, no. Because if it has the same ingredients, bread will still be bread. And it will never become flesh. Because it will need other ingredients.
But, I mean, that's the whole debate. If we're talking about defining things by their properties, then yes. But for
do you know what the word?
We don't define things that way.
Okay, do you know what the word trans in transubstantiation means? The trans in transubstantiation, it transitions from one to another.
On the level of substance, yes.
And you're saying substance is essence.
Yes.
It's so substance is essence.
Every substance is essence.
Its substance is essence.
And now God is now God is no longer essence, because we already.
I never said God is essence. I said His essence is existence.
Okay. My mind is slowly melting, because I can't keep up with the redefinitions of the words.
I think we can all admit that none of us have been particularly moved by this conversation, although it has been spirited and a lot of fun. And I heard some shit I've never heard before, and that's always new. That's always a great thing for me.
Yeah.
Especially as, I have now risen 3 times, and I would not have gotten to hear what I heard today had I not risen the 3rd time. And
which was literally a couple of weeks ago.
I don't know if that's a miracle or not, that I've survived 3 heart attacks. But if it is, apparently God loves atheists.
And He wanted you to know this.
Yeah, he gave me a demonstration of His existence by proving that God loves atheists.
Hey, maybe God just wants you to look more into these arguments and convert.
How would God? This is interesting. Why would God want anything?
God has unfulfilled desires. We've already covered that.
I would say, yeah, so God doesn't want anything. It depends on what you mean by want. But God does will things.
I'll make it easy for you. Is God a perfect being?
Yeah, I would say that God is a perfect being.
So a perfect being wouldn't need anything and wouldn't want anything, because it's already perfect.
Right.
It doesn't need anything to become more perfect.
Right, yeah. God doesn't want in the sense of lacking. anything in the world.
Oh wait, no. We talked about this very early on, that God has unfulfilled desires.
Yeah, so God doesn't want us to know him.
There's a difference between willing and wanting. Like, wanting implies that you lack something.
I know.
Yeah, willing
I know. He's
is
not.
simply-
He's not ordering us. He's not willing. He's not willing us. He's
implies that
not
you can
making. He's not making us know that he
And I
exists.
said unfulfilled desires, and you said yes.
Does God?
If
Does
I did,
God?
I
Does
misspoke.
God want you to stick to the Ten Commandments?
God wills
He's not.
that,
He's
that I
not.
do,
He's
yeah.
not willing me to stick to the Ten Commandments because I at times break the Ten Commandments.
Right, but he
Because
also-
I already break the first, the second, and the third on a daily basis.
He wants you to, though.
So he's not willing me. He's not willing me to obey. I'm asking, does he want me to obey? That's different.
That shit comes from the Bible, and we've already discussed the fact that that's not something
yeah.
that should be taken all that fucking
Yeah.
seriously. Apparently,
The Bible doesn't
So-
count.
So he wills that, but he also wills that you have free will. So there's like two.
Those are
Which
those
one-
are
which one
mutual.
is-
Those are
which
mutual.
one can he control?
Yeah, those are mutual exclusive. That those don't go together. If
Either he
Willing-
can control.
willing
One of them
means
is-
willing means, at least correct me if I'm wrong. Willing means making you do something. That's what willing means. You'll probably come up with a completely different definition that no one's ever heard of before. Because, but that's what willing means. And
In this
and
sense,
we're now
as opposed
talking
to-
about something that I didn't ask because I said, does God want it?
Yeah.
And now,
and
no,
by
please
one-
do me a
when you said-
favor. Do me a favor. Do not go back to willing.
When you said want, yeah, if you mean that God lacks something, then yeah, I would agree. God doesn't want anything.
Okay, so God doesn't want me to know that He exists. God doesn't want me to follow the Ten Commandments. God doesn't. He didn't want anyone to write the Bible. What does God want? Why?
He
Why?
doesn't want
Why?
anything
Why?
because he has everything.
Do we
He
need
has
to?
everything within himself.
So
Except that
do we
he
need to
has
worship?
unfulfilled
Do we need to
desires.
worship this guy? Do we need to go to a church? Do we need to have a religion?
If so, my position is that in order to be perfectly happy, you have to ultimately know God.
The fuck
This
is
is
perfectly
the-
happy?
So perfect happiness.
Let
is
me be clear.
the
Let me
absence-
be clear. Let me be clear.
Oh, wait, hang on.
I live with
Peter,
two
hang on,
women.
hang on,
I'm
hang- Peter,
perfectly happy.
Peter. He was going to tell us what perfect happiness is.
Okay.
Okay, so perfect happiness is the fulfillment of all desires. It's whenever you have
Wait,
a rest.
all desires. All does that include my? Is that just my desires, or is that all desires?
It's all things that you could possibly desire,
Just
because
things I want.
That's
not-
great. That's great. Now we got a perfect segue. Artie, hold on. We got a perfect segue. So let's say someone wants to masturbate.
right,
And you
will that
said,
fulfill all of his desires?
wait, you said on Twitter, Artie, your camera's gone again.
I know.
You said
Everybody needs a minute now and then.
you said tell me up front so I can switch screens.
I don't. Oh, sorry.
So you said on Twitter that masturbating is wrong, and you would be fine with masturbating if it would end in procreation. Is that correct? Am I saying this correct? I don't have the tweet handy.
Yeah, that's correct.
Can I ask a question related?
So what define masturbation for me?
I'd rather not. I think everybody knows what what masturbation means.
If
Sexual
I know what masturbation is, and I know one thing for certain, that it can never end up in procreation. Now I got half a dog.
Well, I think I have a question that would force you to give this more thought than I think you've given it so far. In what way would female masturbation culminate in procreation?
So it wouldn't culminate, I guess, but it could be a part of procreation. So, I mean, my view on pleasure and all involved in sex, right? My view is that the reason that it exists is in order to encourage people to procreate. So it has that sort of end, or
Agreed.
animals as well. So my view is that what you're doing whenever you remove procreation from the equation is you're denying that end. You're rejecting the purpose for which pleasure, or all of the other acts involved inside of sex exists.
But
And
you just define that as being biological. Why am I not allowed to overcome biological urges? I don't necessarily pee every time I feel like I have to. I don't fart. I mean, I've been holding one in for like an hour and 15 minutes. There are natural things that I can, avert or participate in,
right. So the question is, how do you achieve perfect happiness?
No. I was asking about you were describing something in biology and then attributing it to God.
Audie, let him go. So perfect happiness for me, a part of that is watching my two girlfriends. That's part of my perfect happiness.
Okay, but so
How?
Here's the thing.
So I can achieve that through God. How?
So I would disagree. I mean, that would be perfect happiness, because I think there's.
I didn't say. Hold on. I didn't say it was perfect happiness. I said part of me being perfectly happy.
Oh,
that would include me just watching.
I see. Well, so my position is that I think that couldn't be part of it, because
but the problem is you and I are different people, and you said the path to perfect happiness. So the path to my perfect happiness would be fulfilling my desires. My desire.
He's going to decide that for you, Peter, because he has an opinion about it, and if his opinion is contrary to yours,
well, fine.
It's the godly opinion. And we're not going to say biblical opinion, because that's something we can all ignore mostly.
Yeah.
Well, so the question would be whether or not. So look, my position is that perfect happiness consists in knowing God. Now we can debate that, but if that's true, what you would have to do is whatever's necessary to get to knowing God, right?
What if that's the opposite of true?
What do you mean?
What if the antithesis of the truth is that your God exists, and knowing it?
My biggest problem would already be that at about an hour ago, I asked you to demonstrate that God exists, and you couldn't do it. So, knowing God already is out of the question, because no one can know God, because knowledge is demonstrable, and you can't demonstrate God exists. So, therefore, you can't know God exists. And then you come up with perfect happiness, or whatever the phrase was. So in order for me to have a perfect life, I have to have an imperfect life. To me, that doesn't add up.
Yeah, you would have to accept the existence of God first. I would agree with that. And I disagree with your conclusion that I haven't proven God's existence, but that's fine.
And what you have proven is that for me to have a perfect life, I have to have an imperfect life. Which to me sounds kind of silly.
Like,
So,
believe God's going to change what's important to him.
so look, you have to give up some goods in order to get greater goods. That's obvious. You know, I whenever I
claim based on nothing.
I can tell you one thing. I'd rather watch my two girls than whatever you just told me in the past hour and 45 minutes, because that was going from one word salad to another, to a new description of a new word and of an existing word, and it made my brain hurt. It really did. And so, and then you come up with, in order to have perfect happiness, I can't have perfect happiness. So, and that to me just doesn't compute.
My takeaway is that, Tom, you're a guy that you have a definite desire to believe that the Christian God is true, and that you believe the right version of the right religion that believes that your God is true. And I don't think there's anything about you that anybody can say that that's not a fact. That's absolutely the fact. You went from young earth creationism into Catholicism. The wrench into the whole fucking thing is that you've got some interesting takes and convictions based upon some non-dogmatic parts of what it means to be a Catholic that I think are pretty fucking fascinating. And it's like I said earlier, that there are moments where I can definitely see where your argumentation on one degree or another started while you were a young earth creationist, and you've just kind of carried it with you into Catholicism. But the idolatry involved with Catholicism flying so directly in the face of your young earth creationism. I'm assuming you were some form of Baptist, is that, or Pentecostal?
No, I was just like non-denominational.
A non-denominational young earth creationist?
Yep.
Sorry, my first thought is family cult.
So we need to wrap this up. We're already over time. First of all, I'd like you to come back and talk more about this, because I may not understand half of it, but it is interesting to me.
You have definitely tried to stay honest. I fully appreciate
Yeah,
it.
and that's something that a lot of people wouldn't have done. So you score major points for that. What my last question to you would be, maybe you can think about that. What is your desire for their wanting to be a god? Because I think that's what we came up with so far. You desperately want there to be a god, so you found a way to maybe create what this god would be, and then you confirmed with all your new definitions that this god must exist, and therefore he exists. And so doesn't this all boil down to the fact that you desperately want there to be a god, so you came up with a lot of explanations that no one else has come up with to come up with a god?
I think if that were the case, I would also find a way to remain a young earth creationist as well. So I'm a scientist, right?
Not necessarily.
I don't care about
Tom.
I think it's great that you abandoned young earth creationism.
Not necessarily, yeah, because young earth creationism is demonstrably false. So you would need an awful lot of twisting in your brain to stick to that. The fact that you were at least honest enough to accept modern day science, and
it'd have been more fun if you'd become a Jew, not an Orthodox Jew, because that's just the same shit. But if you just had become a Jew and well, because of the way you treat the Bible, I think
there's another option, because here in Holland we have Oh no, just had the word. We have Catholics that don't believe in God, that don't go to church, but still identify as Catholic. Those are a thing.
Yeah, yeah, I yeah, I know. I mean, I don't know that about the country, but I know.
And
I
so,
love those people.
Tom, since you already have said don't take the Bible seriously, um,
See, that's why I thought Jew, because they recognize that it's parable.
yeah. My question to you, Tom, would be: what if God didn't exist? Would it change your life in any way?
Well, yeah, obviously it would change my life.
Why?
But I mean, I think that, well, because so under Christian theology, as I was explaining, God is the final goal of everybody's life because that's how you get perfect happiness. So I would completely change the way that I view the world, as far as morality and all of that, if I were not a Catholic.
What does
It's
morality have to do with God?
yeah, and second of
You
all,
realize into it.
at
That's the worst.
best,
That's the worst argument.
at best, 1/3 of the world's population has that goal.
And as a Catholic, morality, that's a tightrope
Yep.
covered in a lot of urine.
My question would be: what would be different for you if God didn't exist? Is it the afterlife? Is it what? What is it?
Well, no, it's the morality. Like, do you think that I would be like arguing against masturbation if I weren't a Catholic, if I didn't believe in God? Probably not.
I don't think you'd do it if you weren't Catholic, but I think you're hard pressed to justify that the notion that it's immoral.
Are you arguing for slavery, like the Bible says?
I don't necessarily. So slavery is an interesting topic. It's a big topic. I don't per se have a problem with it, except for it. It tends to go towards negative effects.
You have a problem with masturbation, which brings pleasure, which brings pleasure, but you don't have a problem with slavery that is actually harming a person.
Owning people as property is okay.
Well, I don't think you can own people as property.
That is what slavery means. I know you like to redefine words, but that is what slavery means: owning people as property.
I mean, people say that, but it's impossible to own anybody's intellect and will, because people can.
It's not. It's not. You don't own the intellect, and you don't own the will, but you can will them to do stuff, because according to the Bible, you can beat them, as long as they only died on the third day, not the first two.
Yeah, you got to beat them so they die slow.
Yeah,
that's God's will. That's the rule. It's God's rules.
Well, that's a huge topic, but I don't think selling your labor.
Let's make a deal, Tom, because we're going to go close to 2 hours, and I really want to round it off at some point. How about you come back and we talk a little bit more about morality? How would that be?
Sure, we could do that.
I think that would be a very entertaining conversation.
The only issue is I start my morality starting with the existence of God. So
that's all right. All we're going to ask you to do is justify that.
Yeah. So to me, that wouldn't even be that big of a problem. What I would ask you is to let this simmer in for a week, and then after a week, I'll DM you on Twitter, and we set up a new conversation. Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure.
Great.
I just want to say that, hey, I mean, even though we disagree, this was an interesting conversation, and I'm glad that we had it.
Yeah. So if there's any misunderstanding, what we did attack was your ideas, not you, per se.
Yeah.
Right. Of course.
Because in this entire conversation, you have at least been honest and sincere about what you believe. And to me, that's the only thing we can expect from someone who comes on this show. To just be honest and sincere. We can disagree, That's no problem. Artie and I disagree on certain things. Yesterday he told me my first car looked like a Russian. What was it? Doesn't matter.
I just said it looked Soviet as fuck.
Yeah. Okay. So we disagree on what we like and what we don't like. We disagree on other stuff.
Hey, you didn't say you liked that car. You just said it was your first car.
Yeah, I love that first car. Man, who doesn't love his first car? Come on.
I don't know, somebody who looks like they're driving something that was made in the Soviet Union out of cloth.
It was made in France.
France.
In France. So, yeah. So we're not here to attack you. We want to unravel your ideas, and maybe attack some of the ideas, but that's something that just comes up. It's not.
Yeah,
it's
Tom, you and I and a campfire and a 12-pack of beer. This is going to be a really interesting night.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually happened to me before.
But I wasn't describing it as something that I'd never had happen.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I like having people challenge my ideas. It helps me to think through them. So.
I do too, especially if they're capable of actually continuing a thought for more than 3 minutes, and you're obviously more than capable of that. So you do have some interesting thoughts on Catholicism that I'd love to throw you at a couple of my family members, but that would be unfair for everybody, except for me. It would be. Oh, do.
Okay.
Sorry.
So let's wrap it up. And Tom, I want to thank you for coming on. It was at least an interesting conversation, because I'd never heard any of this before. So that's a good conversation to me. If I learn something new, not necessarily agreeing with it, but at least learning about it. So I really want to see you come back, and we'll have another talk, and we can talk about morality. And if you come up with an interesting topic that you want to throw at us, be our guest. Try to grill us in a way that we grilled you.
Okay.
Okay, great. So yeah. So the only thing that I have left is thank this guy, that one, Artemis, for helping out again. Thanks for being here. Thanks to everyone in the chat. There was this short guy was in the chat. Was a little bit difficult towards you, Artie, but he can come back next time as well.
He's got my phone number if he needs to talk.
Okay, that's great. So I want to thank everyone for listening to all of this, and we'll be back soon with more guests. Twitter is on there. We're there. Oh, my finger cuts
It's
out.
down there. It's down there.
Yeah.
And in the doobly.
And the doobly doo. That wasn't that on your channel, the doobly doos.
Yeah,
we don't.
It's a John.
We don't have.
I stole it from John.
Okay, so like and subscribe, and so you won't miss another talk. So catch you all later, and bye for now.